Okay, this meeting has been posted in all the normal posting places.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We are on to student showcase.
There's only one student. Men first.
That's on record, like.
I waited.
All right, so I am Meisner. I have been at Merton 17 years. I am the new makerspace teacher, and I still do the mechanical programming.
And I'm Mary Iwansky. This is my 8th year at Merton, and my official title is STEM and Innovation Coordinator.
So Ron just asked us to share a little bit about makerspace. Mary and I work together, and we've kind of worked together to launch that this year, and so we wanted to tell you a little bit about it and talk about kind of the first modules and how things have been going so far. So one of the questions that I kept hearing from students in the hallway, from teachers, from parents, is what exactly is a makerspace? And so we shared this with all of the students. We had them brainstorm what they thought a makerspace was, and really most of their ideas and more was what a makerspace is. So if you look at the picture, that's kind of traditionally what is thought of as a makerspace. So it looks messy to parents, it looks messy maybe to teachers, but there's a lot of making, a lot of learning, a lot of exploring. And so that is what our makerspace looks like. There's a degree of high tech, so we had students with Chromebooks taking apart computers today, all the way down to cardboard, pipe cleaner, and markers. And so those modules will rotate, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. Hands-on learning, but most importantly, that maker mindset. So what happens when things don't work? What happens when you try something new and it didn't work as you intended, but that's a really cool idea. So we're just talking about that. We know that's happening in the classroom, but we want this to be one more place, and collaboration on lots of fronts. So it's been a lot of fun to launch this. And then one of the things that we had every student in the school do that we thought it would be fun if we asked you guys to do, we'll have to do a kind of turbo speed. The kids got more time. But we read a book to everyone. It was called The Book of Mistakes. And in this book, the main character tries to draw this elaborate picture and keeps making mistakes. And she constantly talks about it as, when she fixes it, well, that was a good idea. So she might, for example, she drew a person with a really long neck, and she added a lace collar. And we talked about how if she hadn't made the neck really long, she never would have thought of the collar. And so we talked through a lot of that. Some of the things she didn't like, she covered up with a rock. So we talked about how those are strategies that you can use when you mess up. And so we had the kids each take a squiggle, and we asked them just to keep turning it and not to kind of settle on any one thing. Just think about what it could become. And each grade level was on a different color. And we talked about how sometimes our ideas just need a little bit of time, sometimes a little bit of quiet. Whatever you want to throw. And they were allowed to use anything in the basket, so a color pencil. They could start with a pencil, they could start with a marker. But the deal was, if you mess up, you can't get a new sheet, and you have to just turn it into a good idea. So we had the teachers do this because the teachers are in the classroom. The kids did this and the teachers did this.
ahead, Bruce.
So while you continue your drawing, so this is what it became. If you walked into the primary school recently at all, the whole left wall, when you go into that new entryway, is covered by all of the kids' sorted squiggles and doodles and designs. They're sorted by color. And so you can work your way across to see what the 5Kers created all the way up to the 4th graders. It's kind of just an interesting study in kids' minds and seeing the creativity of a 5-year-old versus the creativity of an 8 or 9-year-old. On the farthest left panel is all the teachers' ones. Again, an interesting study in the creations of a child's mind versus the creations of adults. A friend and I had an ongoing joke throughout the week. I would come in and be like, okay, how many of whatevers do we have? And we kind of looked and saw how many of a recurring design was coming up, and I won't say what it is as you guys finish yours, because I don't want yours to turn into that or not turn into that. But there was definitely something that a lot of adults saw over and over and over in that design that not as many of the kids saw. We didn't see as many of the kids turn it into that same thing. And so if you haven't made the primary school, it's an interesting thing to stop and look at. It's also the first thing that we posted to our hashtag that we're trying to get going on Twitter, which is hashtag Merton Maker. And so in our efforts to try to share what we're doing in our makerspace and promote our school, I've been tweeting out stuff to the Merton Maker hashtag, both what's going on in Corinne's classes and then also stuff that's going on here in the intermediate building that fits that same maker mindset. So if you're on Twitter or watch at all what's going on in terms of posts from Merton, you can watch for those. Those are all things coming up in our makerspace. So a big question that the teachers ask, because the teachers are in the room with the kids when this is happening, a big question that the parents ask, and then the biggest question that the kids ask is, what are we going to do when we're in this space? So this is super tiny font, but this is the work that I've been doing through my role to help get Corinne kick-started on the Makerspace project. So we have a complete K-4 scope and sequence laid out for the year. They're approximately 6-week-long modules. So you can see going across each row that they have about 2 a trimester. Every student, 5K through 4th grade, spends somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour a week in Makerspace. So they have about 6 hours per kind of set module that they go to. I work on laying out the super basic framework for Corinne. She's been phenomenal in terms of taking my super basic framework of here's how I think this is going to work and really customizing it to the kids that she's seeing come through. She also has the benefit of teaching the same things for classes in a row. So whatever she teaches on Monday to 3rd grade repeats on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so I think it was Mr. Bunish who said, you promised that you have a better lesson on Friday than you had on Monday. And Corinne says, yes, we would expect as teachers that we are reflecting and improving our education for our kids as we go forward. And I can say from working with Corinne, that's definitely something that's happening, that we're seeing. And we're getting to know just a wide variety of kids and age ranges and doing that work. In the stuff Corinne handed out, you'll see that the format we're using is a CREATE acronym. And so all the grade levels between now and the end of the year will go through some kind of coding, robotics, engineering, art, technology, and energy modules, or something that fits within those things, just to try to keep our scope wide when we expose our kids to lots of different parts of making and thinking.
And then just to talk about our first modules, 5K is starting with an individual kind of a challenge. 1st grade is individual challenge as well, but they are certainly collaborating a lot. So 5K is doing a Project Lead the Way paintbrush challenge. They have to think of what they would want a paintbrush to be able to do. So they have to think of the function of their paintbrush and make that design. And then they have to design a paintbrush that could do that, and they will test it with real paint and see if it worked as they intended. So that's a lot harder than I thought. Teaching 5K is a lot harder than I thought, but I'm working on it. They are a lot of fun, and they make me smile and laugh all the time. So they are having a blast with that. And then 1st grade is also using the Project Lead the Way design process, and theirs is twofold. It's also an individual challenge, but they had to come up with a planet and give that planet a theme. So if you think a dog planet or a dessert planet, things like that. And that was the first part of it, and then they had to design a plant that will go on their themed planet. And so we talked about if they had a dog planet, maybe it would be a tennis ball plant, so the dogs could come along and take a tennis ball, things like that. And so the kids have really enjoyed that. just kind of working their way through what engineers do, asking questions, exploring ideas, making a model, evaluating, and explaining. So we've been doing a lot of talking about that. Second grade is kind of stems from a book called What to Do with a Box, and they are using a box, although it's not in the form of a box, it's cut into 4 sections. Mary learned this summer that if you give kids a box and ask them to do something with it, it will most often look like a box when it comes back to you. So we cut it into 4 parts. Second graders most of them are working with a partner, and they have to come up with one idea for their box. They did some individual brainstorming, then they came together with their ideas, and it has to merge into one. So not a birdhouse and a rocket ship side by side, that parallel play idea, but they have to kind of combine them. So they can combine it into a birdhouse that looks like a rocket, but not 2 separate ideas. So they will start cutting cardboard and planning and putting that together this week. Third grade is really excited about their module. It's a Lego We Do Robotics module. Today they built a spy robot, and they had to connect it to their devices, and they had to program their robot. And so there's a lot of problem solving, a lot of things that didn't work. There's a tilt sensor and a motion sensor, and today some kids didn't put the right sensor on, so they were trying to program this robot for motion detection, and it was the tilt sensor for a different kind of motion. And so they were frustrated, and we talked about what do you do when things don't work, and they were working with a partner. So there's 10 kids, 20 to 21 kids, and they are sharing that one computer, deciding who's going to build the Lego. You build it this time, I build it next time, and so there's a lot of collaborating there. And then 4th grade, they were outfitted with goggles, screwdrivers, and they are taking apart the PC, looking at what's inside. And today they were using the Chromebooks to take pictures. We have a big presentation for Mr. Binney, and they are taking pictures and have questions that they are inserting into this presentation, and Mr. Binney is going to do a screencast for them, answering their questions and helping us learn what exactly those things are inside. So today they had to take it apart and remember where the pieces went and put it back together, and then next week they'll be able to keep taking it apart. So lots of excitement in Makerspace this week.
So a question that comes up is, what are we hoping that the kids get out of this? Is it about knowing what's in a PC, or is it about some bigger vision? So one thing that came up in that presentation and keeps coming up is this idea of a design process, what the engineers are going through. Because we are a PLTW school, we're using the PLTW one as kind of the basis of what we're working around. But in looking at other resources, it mirrors pretty much any other one that you find online. So we're hoping that the kids learn this design process, and then that we see the transference to the classroom when they get into these engineering modules in their general settings time. We're also working on the 4 C's of 21st century learning, and so showing kids the importance of collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication, and then also modeling for our teachers through the process of how these can be infused in lessons. One of the great things about Makerspace is that our teachers come in with the students. So instead of like music or art or gym where it's a drop-off, so that our teachers have that prep time, Makerspace is during a content area, and so they have the benefit of traveling with Corinne with their students to that class with Corinne. And Corinne has a great chance to kind of model for our teachers and our students how some of these things can be directly infused into lesson plans. And then all of our students, 5K through 4th grade, are working on a portfolio this year. And so a lot of the things that we do in Makerspace can't be taken with them when they leave. The Lego We Do Robotics are made there and then taken apart for the next group. And so we're working through a portfolio process where they take pictures of those things to share with their parents. But then more importantly, we've centered the portfolio around the 4 C's so that after they do a module, they're reflecting on where they're at personally on those 4 C's. So how they did on communication during that module, or critical thinking, and working on a lot of those growth mindset pieces, which Corinne does a lot of work on in her GT role, but now can transfer to kind of all of our students, 5K through 4th grade. Questions? What did your squiggles turn into? That's my question to you.
Rhinoceros.
A rhinoceros? That's pretty excellent. I don't think I've seen a rhinoceros, so.
And we'd love to hang them on our staff board if you have one. That's finished. We'll add them to the collection.
How many of you made some kind of bird? That was our most common thing that the adults saw. The kids saw it a little bit more obscurely, but a lot of the teachers, when we had them do it, Corinne and I had a bird count going of how many birds different varieties of birds, but all kind of had seen that same bird shape. So.
And somebody made a rock crack and just filled it in any of it?
Yeah, those are my favorite students, is the ones who are like, a squiggle on the page? Nope, I just want to draw whatever. And would just like completely, like take that black marker, and if they wanted to draw a dinosaur, it was like a black dinosaur, and it just went completely over the squiggle. The squiggle was just hidden behind its body. So those are the kids who will really go places. They can just see the path they want to go, and all barriers are forgotten.
A very big thank you to both Mary and Corinne. This is one of those things where you take a leap of faith and say, what do we think we can do? And school board, thank you very much for allowing them to be creative and to work in a space in an area that we really feel is going to make a big impact to our kids, not only today, but tomorrow as well, too. So thank you to the generosity of the school board for supporting this endeavor on our behalf. So thank you. Thank you.
A goose.
Okay, we are on to the approval of minutes from August 28th, open and closed session.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 28th, 2018 at 7:30 open session, and August 28th, 2018 at 6:30 closed session.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additions, corrections? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. On to the financial report and bill listing.
Okay. Let's see here. Voucher listing for August 23rd through September 18th, 2018. General funds payroll, check number 553709 for $233.22. Next direct deposit number is, what's that? No, this is good. Okay. Direct deposit number is 900047450 through 900047568 for $148,587.56. Then wire transfers for payroll liabilities. Wires numbers 2018000042 through 2018000055 for $241,433.79 for a total payroll of $390,264.87. Next, accounts payable. Checks numbers 53127 through 53202 for $144,831.97. Next, AP wire transfers 2018000044 through 2018000066 for $21,260.40. Next, credit card transactions. First is number 820 for $36,796.13. And number 9042018 for $5,524.20. Next, the ACH direct deposit numbers 18190032 through 18190053 for $3,082.40. Total accounts payable then of $211,495.10. Total disbursements $601,759.97.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Okay, delegations to be heard. We have one individual that would like to speak.
It's up to you, Dean. Bob was planning on speaking during my information session, which is coming up in a second because it's a little bit more than the 2 minutes for
Okay.
public participation.
We'll allow that then. to administrative report actions, no donations, and personnel.
Personnel, sure. We'd just like to present Cindy Juergens to fill a part-time confidential administrative assistant role. Her role will be primarily at the primary school in the visitor greeting area, right at the business office, district administration. Basically, that allows for Stephanie then to cover other areas in the district for lunches and then do some of the other work that Stephanie needs to do in the area of special education and so forth. So just looking for a motion to approve the letter of appointment for Cindy Juergens as presented.
Make a motion to approve the letter of appointment for Cindy Juergens as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. And the information is actually perfect. I'm going to turn it over to Jay. And,
I'd like to introduce Bob Menefee. He's from the Rotary, and he's been working with the feeder school, middle school principals, private school principals from the middle schools to talk about some Rotary business that they would like to do with the district in terms of getting some information out about opioid awareness and some vaping issue awareness as well.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks for giving me a few minutes. Through the past winter, Lake Country Rotary challenged themselves to take a look at some strategic planning. Coming out of that was a focus on opioid awareness in our community. And my passion is for the middle school children and their awareness. I did meet with administrators in 6 different meetings from about May 12th through just prior to school starting, getting input from your principals and superintendents about how we might go about this. When I came in, I thought this was all about reaching out 80% of our effort to the students, 20% of our effort perhaps to the community and the parents. And your leader said, well, just a minute here, listen to us a little bit, Bob. We really need the parents engaged in this. So maybe we're talking about 50-60% allocation of our time and focus to the parents and the balance to the students. I'll talk about the community at large later. We also heard from your administrators in the 7 schools in the Arrowhead area school district that vaping was a huge concern. And apparently there was an outbreak of it last spring, larger than ever seen before. So we developed some materials to address vaping, that vaping can be harmful and that opioids can actually kill. And at all 7 schools now, we have posters of this size, as well as some 20 by 30 posters, and some small counter stands that are about 8 by 10 that address the issue if the child gets involved with opioids, it can truly kill. And you know, heroin's an opioid, and we're not really, if heroin's out here, then we got to battle against it. But our biggest concern is painkillers, and the painkillers that are available in homes, unsecured, that the children can get access to. And we'd all like to think this doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it is happening within our community. And while I can't tell you a 12-year-old that's passed away due to opioid use, I am in touch with Waukesha County Drug Task Force. And they explained to me in real direct terms that this is happening in our community, that our children are getting a hold of opioids and are getting busted for it. And we just, Lake Country Rotary simply wants to bring that awareness into the schools. And the reason for me to be here is that I thought it was important, and Lake Country Rotary thinks it's important for our school boards to know what's occurring here. We didn't want you to hear from an Arrowhead board member that Lake Country Rotary's got something going on at Arrowhead or Swallow. And so I've talked to Bob Reich, and I've met with the administration at Arrowhead, and they're using the exact same materials that you'll find in your schools. And I understand that within your middle schools, these may be in the hallways, they may be in restrooms, they may be in a number of places, and that's why we did a different number of sizing on this. As we talk about the parent information, we ask you to share information about opioid concerns with the parents. And we're holding our first, for now we're calling it a parent forum. It'll be at North Lake School, 6:30 on November 13th, the second Tuesday of the month, and we will have your choice and the Addiction Resource Council representatives from Waukesha County at this forum. We look for it to be 40-45 minutes as they present their information and again work on the awareness of the opioid risk and the vaping risk, and then questions and answers from the parents, and exchange and dialogue at that time. And a second one to occur at Lake Country School in a date yet to be determined at the end of January. Have I missed anything, Jay, in our conversation?
No, that's what I remember from the meeting.
So, I'm the old man in the group, right? So, but my passion is for our youth, and I'm glad that I can represent Lake Country Rotary on this. Lake Country Rotary, I meet with the Chamber of Commerce along with Bob Powell, the president of Lake Country Rotary, 7:30 on Thursday morning. And we look to come into the businesses with information that's similar to this. It won't look like this. It may be more about the steps of prevention, and that is, if you're prescribed 12 days and you're better in 3, stop taking it. All ages, okay? And if those extra days remain in your house, lock them up. It's really important to do that. And if you're not going to keep them in the house, you can go to simply the Heartland Police Department. They've got a drop box. There's plenty of opportunities to dispose of it. So we do get overprescribed from time to time. I'm just learning in the last 10 days that, and I'm not picking on any profession, that our dentists sometimes give us more pain medication than we need. We think a lot about surgery and that sort of thing, but from the medical profession, we might get too much and we need to back off of that. If we don't use the balance, let's throw it away. And if we do decide to retain it in the house, we need to lock it up. Thanks.
Thank you very much,
Questions?
Bob. Thank you. No, we'll continue to work with our parent community and our school board and our staff and things to see where these things will go, where the signage will go, and how we reach our kids for sure. We'll continue to partner with Rotary. We'll be communicating out that November 13th date at North Lake.
Please do.
We've been, I know Deputy Farrell of the Waukesha County Police Department already shared with me the next big pill drop in Sussex.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that we push that information out to all of our families too as well. So
Thank you, everyone. Let's keep our youth safe, healthy.
thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very, very much.
And the one at Hartland was just inside the doors off.
Right. And the one piece that Bob did, and he has another one. It's a vaping one. It's a little bit darker, obviously, kind of to represent the lungs and the smoke compared to the yellow with the opioid there as well too. So
Would kids necessarily know that a bottle of things that they knew their parents were, or someone was taking as a painkiller is an opioid?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And that's really where we'll have some conversations about where those get placed, what the exposure is.
That's not our issue. That was more an issue with what the poster said, which I guess I should have asked before you went off. But
Right. The goal of the poster is basically a one-size-fits-all type of approach for middle school. I mean, it really is targeted at 7 through 12 is really where it's coming from.
Yeah.
When Bob discusses about, particularly the vaping, which is becoming more and more large, obviously it's in the news from the federal level, it's getting a lot of attention too as well. What we're finding is when students are caught with either the materials, the equipment, or actually vaping, many of them highlight that it began in middle school. So that seems to be a repeated pattern, not only at Arrowhead, but in other local school districts. And that's really the reason why Rotary is really looking at not just being a high school concern, but ultimately how do we catch it a little bit earlier and bring some awareness to that. Through our health program, obviously at 7th and 8th grade, we start to talk about, obviously a little bit more about healthy choices, but ultimately drugs and alcohol and what the effects are too as well. And we do bring in vaping from that standpoint too, because that really is now the choice. You and I were talking that anything can be vaped pretty much, which is the scary part.
So this is a naive question. What happened to DARE?
What happened to DARE? We
Yeah.
switched over to Too Good for Drugs. So DARE was...
So there's we are doing
We
some
are doing,
program.
correct, yes, we do have a drug awareness program, and it's about choices and responsibility and things, but it is a drug awareness program. It's called Too Good for Drugs, correct.
At what grade level does that start?
5th and 6th grade? Or does it start in 4th?
That's fifth for sure.
5th and 6th grade. 5th and 6th grade, and then in 7th and 8th grade, it kicks into the health environment.
And will that stay, or are we, with the introduction of this, are we looking to adjust education around, or at least exposure, or explain? Because if you're reading a word for the first time and you don't understand it, I'd hope.
Right, and that's where we work, before you just plot these and place them in strategic areas to be noticed and things, we'll have to have a conversation about, with our 7th and 8th grade staff in particular, about what that means. And Phil, to your question, do the kids in the 7th and 8th grade, my middle school child does not know what an opioid is. Does she know what drugs are? Yes. So.
Well, and I mean, I guess maybe even the bigger issue is when you look at a bottle of painkillers, there's, I don't know, N different types of painkillers of whatever chemical name that are opioids, that there's not necessarily a correlation between the word opioid and whatever the drug name actually is.
Correct, and that's really where.
That was kind of my point, that like.
Right, and I can't answer that, Phil, because I know that, knock, knock, we have, I'm not saying we're ever immune, but as a school system and as a school district, we haven't had to really deal with it in the forefront. But we do know, from a community standpoint, that it is an epidemic. It knows no last name, it doesn't care, but I really don't know how it starts, or where it starts, because you're right, there's a lot of different pain meds, and how do you know to take that one or not that one? And that's really what Bob was talking about, is how do we engage our parent community to lock stuff up, get rid of them, and not have them be either exposed or this idea about it's even around.
Sure.
But I don't know the answer to that question, though, Phil.
Okay. It's someone else's deal, that's fine.
Well, it's
The posters and the way that is presented, like that, to me, that doesn't seem like that's going to provide any value, because the word opioid doesn't translate to something that, to what the drug would be, or, so if there's not going to be a tie, then
why? And that's really where
why put that poster up?
Right, it could be the right time.
Maybe there's maybe it's a simple change, or I don't know what.
Yeah, we've got some things to figure out there, because how do you make it impactful, yet not overwhelming, and not, you obviously want it age appropriate as well.
Most importantly, it needs to be acknowledged. So whether we're talking about who can define a word and at what age, it's real. And it needs to start a conversation and get kids, people, adults, everybody thinking about it.
Right.
So
Right.
I think from a big picture, that's the important part. We need to keep going forward with that.
Right, because as a freshman parent, and you may know Kris too as well, at parent orientations, it's heavy. It is heavy, 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 and it comes right there, right to you. And how do we introduce that a little bit earlier so there isn't that culture shock of, oh my goodness, this is what society is like, well, this is what society has become. So how do we become aware? But all very, very good points. So we've got some thinking to do before we just go and place.
Question for Jay. 7th and 8th graders? Do you think there's,
Definitely, because I'll tell you that vaping for sure starts when they're in middle school,
yeah,
without a question.
even the opioids,
Yeah.
I think we're being a little naive. Our 7th and 8th graders don't know what an opioid is.
Well, and I think even if it starts the conversation at home with parents or with Mr. Pomeroy in health class or Ms. Conard in a counseling session, that's kind of what Bob is after. Whether that's something that a 5th grader will necessarily understand, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you can put an age on it because kids know more than we really give them credit for sometimes, right? But I think 7th and 8th grade for sure. And we haven't put any of the posters up yet because we wanted to have this discussion before we did that. And I've been working with Bob since day one with this whole thing. So I wanted to make sure that he had a chance to say what he needed to say. But I do think that the opportunity for kids to have conversations with their parents about it is vital, because this is a time where the kids aren't really thinking about what they're doing until after they've done it and either gotten in trouble for it or got away with it, right? So then we just have to find a way to be able to let them start having those conversations. So your choice is a perfect avenue in November to get parents in. I think we need to do our best to get that advertised, have as many parents there as possible. They've come here a couple of times as well, but it's been a few years since they've been out and about. But this is right there. I mean, you can open up the newspaper or open up your Kindle and see it on the newspaper right there. It's everywhere.
And every family, every student's going to be different. You know, do you have an older brother, sibling, you know, or what's the conversation? What's the new, you know, is the news on more? I mean, so it's all different level of exposure. But Dean, to your point, we just can't be naive about in put our heads.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to say we shouldn't do anything. I was meaning to say that the thing that we do should tie to what the reality of a 5th through 8th grader is, if that makes sense.
Completely.
Because if you Google opioid, there's going to be 50 drugs that come up. That is what's going to be labeled on the bottle of pills in the medicine cabinet.
Yeah, I think the key is that there's something in mom and dad's medicine or brother's medicine cabinet that could kill you. I mean, it's always been true, but I think you're right, Phil, it's hard to know that those bottles are opioids, but I think through the education, maybe we can tell them, you know, I think we could.
Anything in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like opioid seems oddly specific. And I know it's like a problem right now and hot topic, whatever, but like maybe it's just painkillers, like, or maybe just don't take medicine that's not prescribed for you.
Yeah, but then you run, especially, I have very literal kids, when you tell them that, they're not gonna take
Right.
over-the-counter medicine.
Don't
because
take
they-
prescription
that's
medicine that's not
given to
prescribed
them.
for you.
There
Like,
is,
Yeah,
And I got a 7th grader here, and she came home last year, and I don't know where she got it from. I don't know, she's whatever, but she said, "Dad, you have any of those bad kind of painkillers in our cabinet?" Yes, I do. And she and I went together and got rid of them. And just because, Dad had some back pain once, and I just forgot to get rid of them. And I never thought of it, but she's that old, she can think about it. It's probably time to do something about it. So, I mean, that was when she was in 6th grade. So, she's obviously aware somehow. So, she can't be the only one.
Thank you for the time. Yes.
Okay, you have any more information?
Nope, we're good.
So we're on to principal's reports.
And your plans on.
Take your plan. You want to go to the facility plan first?
Oh, facility.
Okay, yeah. The facility team met on Tuesday, and that was Katie, Dean, Jim, John, Sherry, and I. And basically, we took a step back and taken a look at what we did the past 5-6 years from the last facility plan. You can see what we've done. There's some highlights there. The good thing is that we have accomplished basically all of that. Some big ticket items that are still yet to be addressed, and that's something that we'll have to look at for in the next future. That would be like the shed. The other piece on there that really hasn't been addressed is what we call knocks and knobs. Basically, the locks around some local districts, and we had some guys come through, and they're getting kind of tired because some of them are from 1969. John, from some of them, and then obviously we've got original equipment.
Original equipment
Next door too. So, but we continue to march down those things, and then you'll also see some of the priorities that the strategic planning team has kind of put forward. as well as some other items that the conversation led itself to that day. Our next steps for October is to have the administration present to the facility team a tentative 10-year plan about what that might look like, and begin that discussion too. Again, our goal would be to have something to the board formally to approve right around that January, February time, because that then can help us drive our next year's budget as well about what we want to do in some long-range planning. So, very good conversation. The other piece too next time is we'll take a walk around and kind of see exactly what some of those things we might need to see in person. About what that might look like. So,
Climate's risky.
what's that?
Yeah,
Climate.
sounds good.
So, it seems like the majority of these projects were not very grandiose. In the last, I don't know, what, 4 or 5 years, like, we've done big remodels of stuff, right?
Yep.
We did
Yep.
the gym, we did the library at the primary school, play structures at both schools. Now, we're starting some thoughts on the intermediate school office area. There weren't really things on that scale. And maybe there were a couple, like that. Was the workout room on here?
No.
Or that was on the strategic plan?
Strategic plan.
Oh, yeah, learning lounge is another one, yeah.
Yeah.
These were all like tactical things. Can you talk about maybe why that was, or what?
Sure. Well, because
Like presumably, we're not done with any sort of larger scale remodeling that we might want to do. Was it just because this is meant to be like in budget things versus?
this is meant just to kind of as a strategic guide. Again, it's not the end all be all, because ultimately what's on this plan is eligible for Fund 46 dollars. Okay, which is basically it's the 5-year. We have to wait 5 years. We've been putting money in. We've got about $650,000 in there, and if a project is on the plan, we could utilize those dollars to be able to fulfill that. So it's not like everything is on there. Now, we will say 5-6 years ago, we weren't as forward thinking at the time, and we may sure come up against something that comes up 1 or 2 years from now, and you're like, you know, this would be a great community partnership project, or it might be just the immediacy. And then the other piece is ultimately when we take a look at our finances, we've been able to exceed that plan based on some of the fiscal planning and some of the outlook, just to kind of continue to stay ahead of things. So the plan is meant as a tentative map. This one will be much more strategic though, and at least this thing should have all the possibilities, because now we've lived in our
What do you mean by
facility.
strategic in this context?
Strategic to say, hopefully being, hey, what do we want to tackle first, second, third, and fourth? Assuming everything goes as planned. So for instance, we're going to have univents on there, okay? Univents could be 5 years from now. We may say, hey, we just replaced a couple things. We just did some upkeep and maintenance to them. We're going to have them 5 years out. Well, if they start to fail, we've got to push that plan up as well. So ultimately, things are going to continue to pop up in the district that, learning lounge. I wouldn't have been able to forecast that, 5 years ago when we put that on there.
And when we did the initial one, Phil, we used an outside company kind of, and they didn't have a grasp of anything except the physical plant. They didn't have any ideas of what
Construction or...
Well, that I guess that was kind of my point, that at least the document so far is kind of that same stuff, right? It's all the very tactical things that day-to-day need to happen, maintenance, every 10 years you replace whatever, and so it's up for schedule now.
Right.
But if this is the plan for the facilities, wouldn't you want to at least include in that plan that, hey, we're thinking about doing this bigger project, this bigger project, this bigger project? We may or may not actually do it, but if there are other ideas floating around.
So like an idea list of what other improvements.
We've got that. We've got that strategic team's priorities. There's a lot of, there's some dreamy stuff in there.
Yeah, but I mean, that's true. That was pretty vague.
Is this a list I can see, or is this just like private to the?
I can send it to you right now, Sarah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I don't know what you're, I can't see the list that you're all looking at, so I'm like, well, what's on the list?
Who's projecting right now? Can Jay put it up?
Sure, I can try to find it.
It's in the
Just
board package.
for context.
Bring the creative, the create facility future projects up. The other piece though, Phil, the piece that the 10-year facility plan is really designed to drive is basically what we would call the infrastructure, right? The things that we want to make sure we're keeping up with, okay? Like roofs, univents, rooftop units, blacktop, electrical things and stuff like that. As we continue to take a look at our educational environments, as our curriculums continue to evolve, as our kids continue to evolve and our teaching practices, those things are more, obviously, the Learning Lounge is not a strategic function to make sure that school happens compared to the roof, the parking structures and things. So you're right, the 10-year facility plan is not a 10-year,
So that plan is not strategic in the concept of strategic planning. That is strategic in the concept of being tactical, maintaining a facility.
Correct.
So then I guess I'll accept that. Then I would propose that we have a different document that is our, maybe it's a wish list kind of thing, that here's some other crazy ideas that we think we might want to do someday. And you know, the stuff from the strategic planning list, there are some things like that on there, but about half this list, give or take, is also the strategic in the facility perspective, right? They have on here technology upgrades, infrastructure, right? Like all that stuff was included in that other list, or some stuff. You know, general maintenance upkeep is one of the things on the list.
Correct.
So even this bigger picture thing is kind of a mixture. And I assume, this may not be correct, that you probably have other ideas in your head that you haven't talked to us about for whatever reason, just timing or whatever, I don't know. Or maybe you talk to us right when you come up with an idea, but that doesn't seem like the case most times. You think things through, Ron.
Well, thank you for being a thinker. I'll take that as a
Or like the group as a whole, or like.
But
does the idea make sense?
The idea makes sense. It's in a lot of these things. Again, they kind of they come up for what problem are they trying to solve? Really, for instance, the Learning Lounge. That one was it was a grandiose. So hey, can we find a place for it's a large group area for some fun learning, some breakout stuff, and for our kids to have flexible learning spaces. We were able to accommodate that. If you would have asked me, Superintendent, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to envision that. I think we've got a team of educators now from a curricular leadership as well, from an administrative leadership standpoint, that we can see into the future a little bit. So when we start talking about our makerspace, for instance, putting that makerspace on our 10-year plan, that's something that just continued to evolve, and we saw a need for the district, and then we saw a facility that we could make and revamp, and we went after it that way.
Sure.
So I guess there's a combination there, Phil, of some wish list stuff, and there's, believe me, Mr. Nettesheim can fill it up with other things too as well. But from an educational environment standpoint, that's really where we kind of take a look at things. How are things going? What is the need? What is the purpose? And then we kind of bring it to you guys to say, hey, and then the question is how is this getting funded? If you want to fund it through Fund 46, at any moment, you can update your 10-year facility plan tomorrow, the next day, and you can put that on there so those dollars are then eligible to be used.
Personally, I'm less worried about can we fund it from Fund 46 and more concerned with laying out what the vision is for where we're going, right? If we do everything piecemeal, we won't end up with like a holistic, like uniform space. Not that uniform wasn't the right word, but.
If everything's piecemeal, the vision isn't whole.
Correct.
It's chunks that
Right,
don't fit together
right.
necessarily.
And I think we've been trying to make sense of stuff.
And maybe the differentiation is, like, things that have to happen so the roof doesn't fall in,
Yep.
and things that we're doing because we think it would be cool.
Right, or in the
Be a better
back
educational space, or however you want to phrase it, right? But I mean, that's fundamentally the difference, right? We did the gym because we thought it'd be cool. Like, the gym functioned, right?
Right.
But it's a nicer space now. We did the library because we thought it'd be cool. It's a nicer space now, right? Same with the offices here, right? They function. They've been this way for, I don't know, 50 years or whatever it's been. But we want to redo it to make it better, right? It's not directly, you know, the building won't fall down if we don't do it.
Right.
But those kinds of projects, it seems like those should be planned out or thought out a little bit more, and maybe that's asking too much, I don't know.
Yeah, and, because we could sketch out a plan for the nuts and bolts, right? The stuff.
That's the easy stuff.
The easy stuff. The forward stuff is difficult is a little bit more difficult, because you have to really be future centered, and one of the things that, again, whether we want
We're
to be.
doing offices here, and that's gonna be, you know, over the next year or two maybe. You know, we've talked about, preliminary talks about doing the lunchroom here. I mean,
That
those
will
are
all
all
be in there.
things that can be on that kind of list as opposed to the building falling down list.
Correct, and those will be on there. Those will be on there.
You know, and just from a bucket perspective, right? And I'm sure there's stuff at the primary schools
You
too.
gotta remember, this was driven by Fund 46. We had to have this to do the Fund 46 so we could,
Sure,
to-
and I'm saying
to
we
be
should
able
have
to
more.
use those dollars, we had to start that fund. We had to have the 10-year plan
Yeah.
in order to do Fund 46. And it's, as Ron was saying, we have to lay out, and we finished up the meeting, we said, you know, I'm getting old.
We all are.
John, we said, you know, you even have to put in your equipment that's,
Sure.
you know, on a timeline that's gonna be worn out and things like that. Get that all in there. But to add the projects, we can just add them anytime we need to and still be able to access the dollars. But we had to do this exercise of the 10-year plan to
Yeah,
get Fund
yeah,
46
okay.
going.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that, that's fine. I guess maybe I'm asking for something different, right? I'm asking for a facility plan in the strategic planning construct, right? What's our, you know, not how do we make the building not fall down in 10 years, but what do we want the building to be in 10 years?
How can we improve it to make it a better learning space?
Correct.
overall?
Yeah, right. Or facilities, not building specific, but.
So that's what you want to know, but who comes up with that answer? I feel like you're saying the same question. You're
That's
looking to Ron
I
to
think
devise this
that's
plan?
This is our meeting.
Oh,
We don't.
oh, sorry.
technically
It's my first
can't
time.
allow-
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just like, I'm trying to understand
Yeah,
what's,
but I technically, I can't allow a conversation
Oh.
from the audience.
my apologies.
To answer, we can certainly, and I understand what you're saying from a standpoint of learning spaces, and we can take a look at, from a strategic planning standpoint, about next year's is going to be social emotional, and that's really where, for instance, FIED right now, we're working on our FIED spaces, and that's one thing that we might be partnering with our community on, and things like that too. So that's a really good question, Phil, and I think we've got a sprinkling of some of it in there.
Yeah.
But you're right, from a forward 4 or 5 years, 10-year facility educational plan, that'll take a little bit of, because when we go and the really nice part about this is when we go and look at what new buildings look like, and you know, if Mary was here, her husband just got done building a brand new intermediate school, and what do those spaces look like? They look wide open, and we've seen them. I mean, we went to Kettle Moraine, which had just got done remodeled, you know, a year ago. We're able to kind of emulate some of that with some open spaces, but yet work within our constructs too as well.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, but
Those
those,
yeah, I guess the whole premise was, you know, a lot of the ideas of bigger projects, remodeling stuff that should happen, at least from my perspective, have come from you. I think maybe PTO kind of spearheaded the library a little bit more than coming from you.
right, exactly, but it wasn't a need that we can get.
Correct. I assume you just lay awake in bed at night dreaming up how you want the school to be. So you just jot some of those down and I think we'll be good. Or if anyone lays awake at night dreaming of what the school should be.
I'm assuming you have conversations with staff about what they
Yes,
like.
we do.
That too, I don't know.
And all the way from, natural lighting, for instance, one of the things that we look at, how do we bring more natural light into the primary school, into those areas? And that's on our list, and those are the things that we're talking about. All the way from we talked about solar, how do we utilize the roof space that we have to capture what might be an opportunity for some natural energy and things. So we are doing a lot of that, but Phil, we can also get creative and a little bit more crazy if we want to, as in let's forward think what 10 years might look like. And we can start to kind of brainstorm that. But we've been blessed with a supportive school board and a supportive staff that is able to see a need. We investigate it, we try not to jump 2 feet in before we know what we're doing, and then really create the opportunity immediately because we have that opportunity from a fiscal
And
standpoint.
I would also caution with that whole thinking forward about spaces and stuff in a building and doing something which is popular now might not necessarily be a good educational choice until it's tried out elsewhere. And it is a waste of money when it fails because it hasn't been tried out elsewhere.
I want to thank you for that. Because
I witnessed it with Bradley Tech High School. It was a disaster,
Yes.
so.
It's always part of our discussion, seeing what other schools are doing.
Yeah.
Like when we got talking about solar piece, and then we want to see what other people are doing too, because we don't have to be the first.
Right, but I also would encourage us to look outside of our state because a lot of that help happens in other states and not here.
Yeah, can't
I
disagree.
have a question. Number 6, which is on the list in my hand, large group collaborative areas repurposed. Are those like the areas in the primary school that are outside each of the grade pod areas?
Yep, exactly.
Any ideas of what repurposing would look like with that?
More flexible furniture, more different kind of a learning lounge area
Okay.
is what we, when you take a look, when we talk about a vision, when you walk into those large areas, flexible, soft seating, natural light, things like that. Yep. Could be an opportunity for a natural garden in there. I mean, there's some opportunities there too as well.
And if you look at that,
As opposed to an artificial garden.
Compared to the one that's outside with Jay.
and if you look at our 10-year plans and walking it down, and it's a big spreadsheet, every year we've got carpeting and painting. Those are all things that are just a natural progression going down. And furniture, we're a little bit more aggressive on the furniture because we could afford it. But that's always been, we were doing 1 or 2 classrooms or whatever sections every year. But we've been a little bit more aggressive because of there's a desire for that flexible furniture, and then we have the funds to be able to do it.
Right, and we were able to pilot some things too, to Jennifer's point, to give the opportunity to our staff to pilot, see what we want. We got student input then, and then, jump in with the cannonball. So, right. So thank you. So we'll be bringing more of those, and Phil or anybody, if you guys got ideas, we'll continue to look forward. And
It's almost a crystal ball type of thing, to really see what is out 10 years. That's really a
Well,
tough one.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is,
It doesn't have
we're
to
not
be 10
locked
years,
in.
it's
We're
just-
not locked in at all.
Hey, we have some ideas of, it's just like on your house. Well, I don't, maybe a lot of people here live in newer houses, so maybe it's not applicable, but, right, you have this list of stuff like, man, someday I want to, remodel this or redo the tile in the bathroom or whatever, right? There's this list of stuff that you have in the back of your head that if we had that written down somewhere, that could provide value.
Got it.
I'm done.
All right, now we're on to the math. Our math presentation. So one of the things that I asked, and unfortunately Martika Hazelwood is unable to be here this evening. I kind of talked to Mike and Jed on Friday. I think I talked to you guys about it. Got inspired a little bit over our conference. And as you know, Martika is 9 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days in, so she's due on Thursday.
8 months?
No, 10 months. She's 10 months. On Thursday, she's 10 months. So, so she's taking care of some family business, having some things going on that isn't that. So, so she's not able to be here. So instead, we've got the two gentlemen who are filling in for Martika, our math specialist, to give a little bit of principal's report on how the new math curriculum is going. So some of the things that we've done to enhance and bring this to life, hopefully throughout our district.
So I'll make sure that I share this with you too, because there's a lot of work on some of these slides, and I'm not going to read them all, just so you're aware. Okay, so these are just some examples of ways that we have supported teachers up to this point, bless you, and what we will be doing moving forward. Mike and I are going to be taking over somewhat of the coaching role, or at least the support role for our math teachers when Martika's on her leave. So we've been attending those meetings up to this point so far. Yeah, so we'll just keep going on from there. Supporting families, if you saw in both Mike and I in our SMORE this last week, we had some information that will help out some parents. I was just at our 6th grade family information night was held in the library at 5:30, and Mr. Klink and Ms. Kreuzer did a great job of explaining some of the things that they're going through. As with all new programs and new curriculum, there's going to be some growing pains, both on the part of the adults and the children, right? So we have to keep that in mind as we're going forward. So one of the things that was mentioned tonight was just make sure if you have questions about math that you contact the teachers, because they're the ones who are in the trenches doing the best that they can. There's going to be a math night in February over at the primary school.
I'd just like to jump in on the fact that we've had 14 days of school, and that implementing a new program after 23 years of everyday math is not a knee-jerk. This is roll out of bed and you're just swimming with this. This has taken a lot of work, and it continues to do a lot of work, and you've got a staff that is extremely committed to doing it right. And when you haven't necessarily gotten, they're very critical about what they're doing, and they want to get it right. When it's not going like they want it to, it's like, okay. So patience in this process is very important. So we ask that.
So here's the really tiny print. So on the left-hand side is kindergarten through 5th grade, the Envisions program, and the different components that go into a lesson that would happen during a class period. And on the right side is 6th grade. Ron and I actually had a conversation about the fact that one of our teachers here is teaching a 5th grade math class, and then also has a 6th grade math class. So not only is he learning a new curriculum for 5th grade, but he's learning a new curriculum for 6th grade as well. So it's a juggling act. And one of the things that we have tried to build in are opportunities for our teachers to collaborate. But I will tell you that they don't just do that during the school day. They're texting one another, they're sending each other emails, they're calling each other on the phone, they're consoling one another, they're cheering on each other. I mean, it's going to be a process, and as Mike said, it's actually 15 days. Today was our 15th day. So that's math too.
I'm kind of a one-to-one.
When you look at all of this, when you look at all the things that go on within a lesson, there's a lot there. And I asked all of our 5th and 6th grade math teachers today, and then I sat and had lunch with some 5th grade girls today to ask them about the math program, so I'll give you some of their insights a little bit later on here as well. So there's a lot that's going on.
I walked down the hall the other day, Thursday, about 4:30, 6 teachers in the hallway. We turn the lights off about 4:15, 4:20. They're in the hallway talking. You know what they're talking about? Math. So that, I mean, that's driving a lot of conversations right now, and so I echo what Jay just said.
There's a lot of, it's all math, right? So it's still math, but there's different ways of going about it, and part of it is some of our teachers piloted the program, and they already had their procedures in place, right? So they could just go ahead with that curriculum and have it done. So not only is it the 15th day of school, but they have to get the procedures in place, their expectations in place, both for themselves and for their kids. So even though it's tough, they're smiling as they're doing 5th grade math here. And then Mike has a couple of pictures that he took with a small group in 5K. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot, and I'll explain one of those opportunities in just a little bit. They take pre-tests,
Pre-tests are very important in determining just where you're going to go with your instruction. And so, more than ever, pre-tests are giving us some information back that's telling us where kids are, what they're strong in, what they need reteaching in, and so pre-tests have become.
In this year, it's critical because of the new program. We just want to find where the gaps possibly are, where we've got to fill in as well.
So here's a learning strategy going on in 5K. And then I'm going to try and play this for Mike. He did a video. Oh, it says I need permission to view this video. So we'll have to make sure we get that set up.
Okay.
I don't know how to fix that. But Jim might know how to fix that.
All you have to do is hit request.
Well, then Mike's going to have to send, and he's going to get an email, and you're going to let me in. I need permission, so I'm requesting permission.
Well, just change the settings. That's easy.
Yeah. There's a video there that Mike had a conversation. Why don't you explain?
I came up to a fourth grade girl, and they were working on math, and I just kind of slid in next to her, unrehearsed, cold, just caught her working, and which is really unfair. So, but we started talking about what she was working on, and she was working on rounding. And I asked her what the exercise was working on, and she explained to me over here about how she was taking these numbers and rounding them, and I said, well, how does rounding help you? It's a strategy to help me add more precisely, and it helps me to be better in math. But she really paused to put the language into place. And the one thing I noticed during the conversation we had was kids learning the language of math. They know the language of reading, they know the language of writing, understanding math, and being able to articulate it, whole different animal. So we have kids who work on writing workshop, readers workshop. Okay, now you have to talk and think like a math person. That's not easy for kids, especially with new vocabulary. So this student was just wonderful. She was very patient with me, and I wish you'd see it because it's.
We'll just make sure they have access, so when we send it to them, they can actually watch
All right,
the video.
it's worth it. It's worth it.
And then here's math time in 4th grade.
So I guess what I want to show you is that, you know, the kids working on the floor there, and then there's Mrs. Krajewski with the kids on the floor in front of her, and she's brought up the lesson on the smart board. So she's able to point to things on the smart board at the workbook page and what the kids should be working on. So the visualization is there where Jane is in that particular part of the lesson, and across the hall, that's where the kids, Mr. Sutter's kids, were working on that part of the lesson, the independent practice. And whiteboards are around all over the place. The kids using them to practice, to transfer their work into their workbook. It's a way that the teachers can walk around and see how the kids are working. Small group work beyond independent practice, but this girl was working on some independent practice, and sometimes it's a lot easier to work when the figures are bigger than small in the workbook. So you can find whiteboards in 5K all the way through 4th grade.
So then I ate lunch with some 5th grade girls today, and I just said, hey, we started with just small talk, and then I got into math. So I said, tell me what you think about the new program. They like the online platform. Brian Klink tonight said one of the things Everyday Math didn't have was, first of all, it wasn't very updated, but there wasn't an online component to it where they can go and find information. There's videos, there's tutorials, all different sorts of things. All 4 of the girls said they like the personalized homework. So they do a quick check at the end of a lesson, and the assignment is actually tailored to the kids so that they're working on only, if they know something, why have extra practice on it, right? If they've already proven that they know it, the practice actually goes to those things that they need a little bit more work on. They like the quick check, which gives them the personalized homework. So then I said, okay, so do you do really well on the quick check because you'll get fewer math problems for your assignment? And one of the girls said, doesn't always happen that way, Mr. Klosik, sometimes you get more. So it's not like they've got it figured out. I mean, this is 15 days in. It was only 14 because they hadn't had math yet. And then they didn't really have anything negative to say about the program because I said, this is your chance. I'm not going to share it with anybody. maybe lied a little bit. I'm not gonna share it with anybody. Is there anything bad? And they said no. They like the fact that they have online, they have their books. So then I talked to our staff, and there's positives on the left-hand side. Lots of options, explanation of answers, variety of I do, we do, you do. So the teacher does their modeling of what happens. Then the kids work in partners or small groups for the we do, and then the you do is they just do that. And they like the online components. And the struggles right now, day 15, getting in the flow, piloted but feel like we're treading water. So they feel like they're just staying ahead of the kids, which is kind of what happens when you're putting a new program into place. The 5th and 6th grade are very different formats, which I said before, and then not a lot of teaching. And I don't mean that they're not teaching, but it seems like there's a lot of investigation that the kids have to do on their own. So they're there to be able to support that, so there's a lesson, but then when the kids go to work, if they're working in a workbook and they have to explain something, it's not that the teacher has said, this is how you explain something, they kind of have to figure their stuff out on their own. I know you're giving me a weird look like you don't really understand what I'm saying, so I'll try and clarify if you give me a question.
I think I understand what you were saying. My question before you started talking on the slide was going to be what that bullet point meant. But,
Yeah, so I kind of explained it.
You kind of did.
Yeah.
It seems to me like that's a good thing.
Yes, there's a lot more investigation that the kids have
Like
to do.
the kids should be doing.
Yeah, it's not as much regurgitation.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah. And then,
Well, that's a wonderful segue because
regurgitation?
we're at the other end. We're on the other side of it, where there's knowledge of school. The positive is on the left. Videos are helpful, and I won't read it out loud to you, but there's the workshop layout that we talked about. That's just a carryover from what we do in the other workshops, which is terrific. And they like, the bottom one is they really like how it addresses the struggling learners early with how to help kids, because not everybody is great at math. Some kids really struggle with it. And on the right side, there are the struggles. And you'll see the familiarity with vocabulary. When you're in 5th and 6th grade, you've got a little bit more math background, so you can kind of understand it. But some are, the word explain in 1st grade, argue your point in 2nd grade or 3rd grade. Those are challenging.
It's hard enough to get them to ask a question,
Yeah.
let alone explain.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's tough for a teacher there to sit there and watch the kid think. I mean, wait time is uncomfortable, and it's really easy to pick up the pencil and do it for them. So,
When I talked to the teachers in 2nd grade, we were talking, I said, I just need a couple minutes of your time. It became 35 minutes about what's going on in their mind, and we talked about things like 2-step questions, multiple numbers, and kids have to figure out, what do I do with 3 numbers? I see 3 numbers, I add them together. No. Which 2 numbers do you need to use to solve the problem? Or do I use 2 and then do I use the 3rd? That's what kids are learning about, how to produce solutions creatively. And then there's the quick checks don't always match what the lesson was about. So some of the wording is tricky in some of the quick checks. And as Jay said, it's not always going after should this be about what we just learned? And it's not always the case.
With the whole explain feature, I know as a parent, the kid who struggles explain math, there's a disconnect at home too, to not tell your child what's right, because it can be a struggle.
So that's what's affecting the pace of lessons too, where we're talking about kids don't regurgitate it. I have to understand it on the front end before I can even think of what do you want me to do? It's not always that clear. So we have to have kids thinking in a different way than just the way you do in reading and writing. It just kind of flows. In math, it's different.
And particularly the middle 2 bullet points or star points, are those mostly issues because the program is new and we're not used to vocab and 2-step questions?
Yes.
Right, it's not necessarily that it's not even that it's harder.
It's hard.
We're just not, well, I mean, it is, but.
It's harder on 2 counts. It's new, and it's a little bit different way to look at math. So there's two things that are in the way of kids as they're.
the depth of knowledge, the DOKs that are being asked are much higher than what the prior program asked for. my son would say, Dad, I want the old math program back because it was easier. And I said, tell me what do you mean by easy? It's like, now we have to explain ourselves. Which means we're digging into a different depth of knowledge that we're asking the student to bring into their math explanation.
And in explaining that they don't have the vocabulary yet, like in fourth grade, because they hadn't had that introduction to having this curriculum.
That was kind of the point I was trying to make, that hypothetically, if we had been doing this program for the last 5 years,
Would be in a better place.
these wouldn't necessarily be two problems,
Right.
No.
because they would have had exposure to that language.
That's what
As opposed to the depth of knowledge is
Right.
always going to be a problem,
No, it will, no. I
to a
think-
larger extent than the vocabulary, perhaps.
And the primary school is a place where kids are exposed to things. They're not at a mastery level as they go through, so it's a lot of exposure, like, and then it's kind of like discovery. Oh, why'd they just tell me that in the first place? No, there's a different way to work through this, and it's discovery. So as you get older and you get into more personalized learning, and okay, which strategy do you use? Do I draw a picture? Do I make a table? Well, neither fits this. I have to look for something else. Now they're just trying to figure out, what are you asking me?
It sets them up to think critically about math and having different strategies to use so that when they do get to higher level math, they're not just regurgitating a set sequence, they're looking at it more independently and how their brain works to apply the knowledge they already have to work through this problem. It puts them in a good place to go further in math a lot quicker once they do have the depth of knowledge, because they already know how to strategize better.
It's interesting, this is my 8th year, and you guys have been at, we've never had this kind of conversation or this kind of discourse around mathematics with our kids.
No.
Or with our
I
staff,
agree.
Because we did an adoption 5 years ago, when we took a look at what was out there. At the time, it still was everyday math. It was that was still the product of choice. We updated the versions and everybody just slid right in, and we swore we were doing it for 23 years, like Mike said. But this has really pushed our staff, and we've really had some really good conversations surrounding this. Looks like Dave, we got our video up.
Uh-oh. That was a fail. Wait a minute. Yeah, the sound's really good there too.
Pardon?
There's a chord, here it is, wait a minute.
We're learning
Here we go.
like how to round.
I can start over, thank you. Here we go.
Listen carefully, she's not a very verbose young lady.
What are you working on today? What are you learning today?
We're learning like how to round. Well, I know how to round, but we're learning to do like these problems with these numbers and rounding them. Well, this one we had round, but those two we had to just do all the sums for them.
Okay.
Sums.
Does rounding help you figure out problems?
Mhm.
And how does that help you with problems?
It helps me so that I can find the answer easier.
Perfect. Thanks.
She used the word sums, a math term. She didn't say, gets the answer. I mean, that's some of the expanded numerals, expanded terms that were kind of like kept in a closet with the teachers. The kids are using those now. They're expected to use them. And I was really happy when she said, find the sums. And she was using reading strategies. She was looking back at prior knowledge. She was looking at other pages like, what's going to help me answer this? So that was some reading that she was using there too.
You can see the kind of patience she had, because it would have been really easy to just say, Doesn't it help you find the answer? Doesn't it help you find this? I mean,
You gotta believe in them, Ron, you gotta believe.
But I'm telling you, from a math teacher, it's real easy to pick up the pencil for them. And let me show you again, because obviously your pause means that I didn't do the job the first time. Go back to Jay's point about we're letting them discover more and more on their own. We're gonna give them the foundations, and then they're gonna continue to build together. Thanks, Jay. So thank you. Our seventh grade program, we have a new algebra program going into in 7th grade, and heard nothing but good things from Colleen and Joanne and Michelle too as well. They spent the half year piloting it and they finished that too as well. So
I have a general question about new curriculum adoption in general. It seems to me like we could do a better job communicating with families about new curriculum adoptions and whys and benefits and all that sort of stuff. I know math is always a hot topic because, well, ever since the Common Core stuff, well, no, it's like all the Common Core stuff, and like, I mean, you see it, you know, on Facebook if you use that, which I don't, but, right, like, you know, even adults can't solve this 3rd grader math problem, which are always normally pretty easy, but that's besides the point. But, like, so, I know we told parents that we're switching and we did the piloting, and so some kids had experience with it, but as being part of the, you know, curriculum adoption process, like, we had a lot of information and background in terms of why we didn't like the old program, what we were looking for, and why we decided to use this program. And that story never really gets communicated to the community. And so a lot of people, you know, the first 3 weeks of school with, you know, the vocab on the math homework, you know, is talking about, you know, things that parents aren't familiar with because they, you know, haven't done grade school math in, you know, 30 years or 20 years or whatever. So like they are taken aback at like, well, what is all this nonsense? Like, why are we doing all this? You know, if we're a little bit more ahead of the game in terms of having even if it's like a section in our website of like, here's our curriculum adoption blog or whatever, like
journey, yeah, sure.
Right? And so, you know, oh, well, this year we're doing, you know, writing and Phi-Ed, and here's the different things we're looking at, and just to have some background.
I would not do it in educational language though, because parents don't understand that.
Yeah, and maybe some of that content ends up going out as s'mores or something like that. Yeah, it has to be like human readable.
Yeah, teacher readable.
It does.
Just like math problems, right? They have to be human readable. Yeah, okay. But after the fact, right? I mean that.
Oh, it didn't come out the first week of school.
No,
Yeah.
being more preemptive. We knew we were doing it last
Well,
year.
but like
Discuss it at the end of the year.
Well, why didn't we switch in the first place? You know what? Because those are, you know, anytime there's change, those are the questions that come up, right? Especially for the, you know, the 20 of us sitting in that room knew that the 20 people that were in charge of picking the math curriculum all came in and said, we need to get rid of everyday math. It's terrible. Or not terrible, right? It doesn't, we don't use anymore. But that story never got told.
So
I think commentary makes sense?
It does, and I think we did kind of step that along the way as we were going through our math curriculum last year. I'll have to take a look at on how we kind of built up to the new program to our families and talked about the why, and you know, we just.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was communicated, but I'm thinking we did something. It wasn't just, hey, all of a sudden here's the visions. We talked a little bit about the group of people that came together, and we had a presentation that then we kicked out with.
Okay.
It wasn't as
Jul's
formal.
nodding like it's the truth. So
I'm pretty sure we built up this change and answered the why behind why we wanted to. I'd have to go back, but I think obviously, Phil, we need to do a better job of really being intentional at this.
But the parents have to go back and read that stuff.
Right.
Because if they never go back and read, you can do the greatest job of communicating that out. But if you don't read the stuff as a parent.
But I'm just also putting it out to parents in the format that they're used to seeing, like Mr. Hudish's some more every week. I know I read that. I know a lot of parents I know read that every week. Having that stuff in something like that is going to be more meaningful than having it in a school board video.
No, or a summary or something like that.
Or a
Yeah,
letter that
certainly.
gets sent.
Certainly, yeah, we could.
Well, and it would
take
be
a look at
nice
that.
to have whatever that running commentary is on the curriculum development be in a place that can be referred back to, right? Because coming through in a s'more, like, it's here, I read it, and it's gone forever, right? Like, well, I know, obviously, it's nothing on the internet is, but right, like, there's not a good way for me to go find, you know,
But
this
what was
is
said
more
here,
about
yeah.
envisions.
You don't
Like,
say that?
I bring them out and hang them on my fridge.
What we feel is obviously we're going through another adoption. I think we can keep that at the forefront as we move forward. October 3rd is our first meeting with technology, looking at the teacher technology standards as well as the writing components. So we might have an opportunity there to be a little bit more clear about what it is in an avenue that is parent-friendly and where parents go to on a weekly basis. So we can keep that at the forefront, certainly. Certainly can.
Back to the table.
Your business.
Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We have the review of the 2019-20.
Better not. And we better not. Here we are. So, in the board packet, share, I've got one extra here. This is kind of a little detail about what's going on here. Obviously, as an Arrowhead feeder consortium through the high school and the feeder schools, we do collaborate together to look at the calendars. And obviously, we're in the 18-19 school year, and which leads us to believe, and actually I got my first question about the 19-20 calendar from a parent today, wondering when they want to try to schedule a family vacation around a traditional October break, when we've had it before in the past. So this is something that, you know, we think about, oh, you're looking at the calendar already? Well, people already are too as well. Now, in the packet, I did attach a, basically the tentative one that would basically mirror the Arrowhead Union High School's calendar. Now, as you know, that basically puts us into the second week of June, okay? So through some conversations, both at the administrative level as well as with some school board members in a preview here, what you have in front of you is a tentative schedule that would end the same date that we do this year, okay? The same date that we would do this year. Also attached is, just wanted to make sure everybody was clear about the DPI's guidelines is not about days, it's about minutes. And what you have from a tentative schedule standpoint, the one that I think I'm leaning more towards, I would like the board to really think about, is how do we get done that first week in June and ending on June 6th. That gives us actually 176 days of school. This year we have 177. To recoup that other day, we would be looking at eliminating possibly the 2 half-days at the end of trimester 1, at the end of trimester 2. So we basically would not have any half-days around the grading periods. But we would have
How would that affect teachers?
Teachers, the way we would do it is we would take that 2 half-days, make them 1 contractual day, which would be fulfilled outside of their teaching contract. So we're not adding any time to it. That time would just be done outside of the normal workday. And that's where they would get their 1 contractual day back. So it is still paid time, no loss in paid time for our staff. The difference for staff, though, is we do typically give them, for instance, on this year's calendar, it would be like November 27th. November 27th, I do believe, or 26th. Traditionally, what would happen is the students would go home at noon. Staff then could either stay on campus or leave to do their grades. Okay? So now, instead of, my proposal would be to go to school the entire day and then comp the teachers outside of the workday to complete their grades.
I don't understand that.
Okay?
The comp part. You're saying comp in time or comp financially? Or
Comp in
both?
time as a contracted day. We have 195 contractual days with our teachers.
So basically,
They have
we're
one less
paying
day
them
of
for working
training
that
at the
day.
beginning of the school year or something.
Correct.
And that's what it would be, one less day
One less
of
day.
training at the
Yep.
beginning of the school year.
Well, no,
Or
we
the
just,
end,
we actually would be,
wherever it is.
we actually would be, because if we go from 177 to 176,
Mhm.
okay, that means there's your 1 day.
Right.
Really, that would go back into a grading. So we're not losing any professional development. That student day, remember we went from 177 to 176. The 177th day for a teacher would be that grading day, which would be 2 half-days
Which we're asking them to do outside of school hours, so
Correct.
evenings or weekends.
Yep, and that is, we're one of the only districts around that compensate teachers for grading. Typically, what's that?
Except high schools.
Except, well, high schools, I don't know, sometimes, well, they'll have full
They
day
have
grading.
their
Correct.
exam periods for.
Right, but the exam periods are typically half-days and then
and then
they
they
finish.
grade. Yeah, but the teachers are still on campus working and grading. That's how it typically works.
I'm not sure that works for
And
Arrowhead, but
Arrowhead is its own special.
it's its own
entity.
special thing, so. But yes, so it's more of a high school thing as kind of a middle school thing, so.
What is the motivation for going from what Stephanie passed out to, which ends on the 11th to
Yep.
ending on the 6th?
Exactly, basically recapturing a week of summer.
Well, I mean, 2 days.
Yep.
What do you mean? I mean, right?
Well, we've finished right now the end of the June this year, we're done on a Friday.
Okay.
Arrowhead comes back the following week. Let me pull up the electronic.
Yeah, okay.
So,
So the initial draft from the,
Yep.
all of
the stuff in the packet,
in the packet, yeah, was ending on, with a half day on the 11th.
correct. Yep,
And then the thing you handed out was ending on the 6th, which is the Friday before that.
yes. Yep, the motivation there would be to, we can end on a Friday, which is always, I think, good, in my opinion. And then ultimately, it also gives us a week before summer school starts, which we can do some facility planning, some cleaning, get John's crew a little bit.
So summer school still wouldn't start till the 16th?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yep, because our friend, our partner in Swallow, I kicked this out to the other K-8s, and they said, right now, the feedback, originally, right now, their thinking is they're gonna be done that 11th, that Wednesday.
Makes sense to me to finish June 6th.
So,
So we're removing the February 17th.
Yep.
That's just, it's a 3-day weekend
Yep.
instead of 4.
exactly, yep,
And then
eliminating 2 half-days.
half-days.
Yep, eliminating 2 half-days.
To make the additional vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. This year, for instance, on this year's calendar, we only have 1 day off in February. Only 1 day off in February. Arrowhead, for instance, has 2 days off in February. The other feeder schools just have 1.
I don't understand how we removed 2 days, but we moved the end date back 3 days.
We only went to back to.
Well, if we moved it from the Wednesday to Friday, that's moving back 3.
Right. The other piece to it, this year too.
Well, yeah, Friday's a
And
half
this
day,
year,
this
but, correct, Friday would be, but,
So it's the same,
no, but the other piece is compared to this year, if you think of this year too as well, there's a shorter Christmas break.
I'm comparing this to this though.
Right.
Not this current year, but this calendar to this calendar,
Mhm.
right? Throughout the year, there's a total of 2 days different, but we're moving the end date up 3 days. Is that just because we don't need the days, we just needed the minutes?
We don't need anything. We've got plenty of minutes and we have plenty of minutes. I guess I'm not sure what your question is.
He's saying why isn't a 1-for-1 match with, if we're moving it only 2 days as opposed to 3 days when we're taking 2 days out of the calendar total, but we're moving it 3 days.
Correct.
So why
Which
isn't
I guess it was
an
just
equal
because you wanted
match?
to end on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So, by that argument, the one that ends currently on the 11th could have just ended on the 10th and not removed any days.
Correct. Actually, what I would say is I think Arrowhead,
I mean, that's just a function of what Arrowhead and the other.
Right, Arrowhead was doing, right, yeah.
proposed, right?
Days, this gets all kind of convoluted, and we're taking a look at this, that, and then there's a leap year in there, and that got thrown in and stuff. So ultimately, what I wanted to do was showcase to the board, think about when you want to end. You want to end on a Friday, or do you want to end on Tuesday or Wednesday the following week? Ultimately, we have a ton of flexibility from an administrative lens. We feel 176 days of school will be adequate with what we need to do educationally, we feel. And then ultimately, though, we do know that periodically throughout the year, we still feel that this calendar gives families, enough time to do what they need to do, but ultimately enough professional development and what we would call mental health days for our staff, where just they can disengage from the work that they do on a day-in, day-out basis. So something to think about. Typically, we approve this in November, but that's typically when we do. But we introduced it from a Arrowhead consortium idea, and just wanted to bring it to the board so we can start thinking, because I know parents are already starting to think about it.
There is one different day here for Arrowhead where they're off on the 17th, and we wouldn't be on.
Correct, that would be the day, right, yeah. I mean, you can, if you want to coordinate that, I mean, I don't know, we didn't talk about it from an administrative lens about would we rather have Valentine's Day off or President's Day. The 17th is President's Day.
But that'd be one extra day that Arrowhead would have that we would have.
Off, correct, yeah. Our proposal would be to only have one of those two off. You can certainly, from a minute standpoint, you can put it in. So.
We have time to think.
We have time to think about it. You have time to think about it. Yep. Certainly. Just wanted to propose the idea.
Okay, item B under new business is the CISA contract, CISA 1.
Yep, just wanted to bring the annual contract for CISA 1. Basically, that's just the annual membership fee. We pay the ESEA membership fee just flat out, basically the same as we did in years past. So just looking for a motion to approve the CISA 1 contract for the 18-19 school year as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the CISA 1 contract for the 18-19 school year as presented.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, then say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. There's no more new business. We're on to future meetings and agenda items.
Next month, would love to get, per my last evaluation, wanted to get together again in closed session to review district administrator's evaluation. Is everyone open at approximately 6 o'clock on the 29th? You can do it just before the regular session if that works.
Everything goes good?
Yep.
I think lands on 4.
Okay.
I'll raise it here.
Right.
I'll raise it here.
The only other thing we could do is push it to 6:30 and then start the normal one at 7:30. Start at 6?
We'll shoot for it.
Okay. So we'll go 6 o'clock in closed session on the 29th. And we'll just be here as well, so we'll be at the intermediate school. And then ultimately on the 29th too, is we will be setting the district levy. We will have all the final pieces for the school business finance puzzle that will allow us to set our budget and set the levy. All right.
Is there any business that we're going to invite on? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I'll second.
The motion is second, all in favor, then say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.
Perfect. Stephanie, I think we just need one signature, correct? 2 signatures?
Okay.